Well, welcome to Talkin Trades. Stephanie and Patrick from Hello Heart.
That's right.
Join us today. One of you, perhaps Patrick, we'll start with you. Tell us about Hello Heart, what it is and what you do.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Rut and Randy, for having us here. We're excited to be here. Hello Heart is we're a digital solution for hypertension, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. So what we do is we give you a blood pressure monitor, and you download an app on your phone. And you take your blood pressure, and through Bluetooth technology, it will automatically upload to that app. And that app is what will give you the instant coaching for you to help you understand what your blood pressure readings mean, and give you simple, easy tips that you can incorporate into your lifestyle, to lower your blood pressure. So it's simple, easy things that you can. It's not going to say run a marathon, because that's not practical. It's not going to say take 10,000 steps. That's right. Not going to say take 10,000 steps.
So it does say don't talk politics.
Don't talk politics.
Exactly.
Giving table.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I will tell you what it will do. It will tell you every morning when you don't. Here it is. Don't forget your blood pressure today. It takes just 30 seconds.
Correct.
So it reminds me every morning to take my blood pressure.
Absolutely.
So which is good.
And,
right?
and if you can also put your medications in there that you take, it'll remind you to take your medications as well. And you can even put in there, I have a streak. Personally, I have a streak of 87 days that I have taken my blood pressure medication. I haven't forgot.
I can't say that.
Why should our members be focused on heart health?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, because heart disease, cardiovascular health, heart attacks, hypertension, it's the number one cause of death in the United States. Even with COVID, it's still the number one. It is, we're here in Georgia Bulldog country, so being number one is very important. Well,
Yeah,
that's right.
Right here, for this, it's not, being number one is not good. So being the number one cause of death is not good. Being the number one disease state that's out there, that's bad. It's also the number one cost for most funds that's out there. I always kind of try and temper that a little bit, because some of your like your cement masons, your laborers, they maybe have musculoskeletal might be number one claims cost for them overall.
Well, let me say this. As a trustee of a fund for many years, it's always been opioids, number one, and blood pressure medication, number two.
Yeah.
Wow.
On prescriptions. And I've seen that data 17 years in a row. That's what it was.
Yep.
Always. And, it beat it all, right? Because I would have thought, kind of hand-in-hand, cholesterol and blood pressure, but we're deep fried here too. We're not only number one, we're deep fried. We deep fried Twinkie, man.
Yeah.
And the building
bars.
trades are not, we're not exactly known for being the most healthy of the businesses. It's not like we're.
But blood pressure medication outpaces cholesterol medication.
Yeah.
And when you talk about our members, they get 30 minutes to eat. Not that you can't eat healthy in 30 minutes, but it's typically a box lunch, right? I mean,
right.
It's not the best of the best.
It's harder. And the other thing about being number one, it's also the number one disease state that you can have the most impact on. If you change
Preventable.
If you change their lifestyle a little bit, make
Can.
gradual changes. You don't, like I say, if I decided I wanted to run a marathon, I wouldn't wake up and run 26 miles, right? And the first day. So that's the beauty of the app with these insights that we talked about, the suggestions that we're going to give you. It's very, hey, try to exercise for 30 minutes today. And if you can't do 30 minutes, do 10.
How did it come about? I mean, I kind of want to know. I know I've known Patrick a long time, and Stephanie, we just met. And but how did Hello Heart come about? Why was it necessary? I mean, we know the health side, but why? There are other ways I can buy. I got a blood pressure machine at home aside from the one I got from you. But tell me how this came about.
Yeah, you can go and get a blood pressure cuff like you had one at home and take your blood pressure. And I had that before I started with Hello Heart. I take my blood pressure, I would write down my readings, and then I would take them into my doctor and say, here are my readings. I have no clue what they meant. I had no clue about
I still
anything.
don't.
Yeah,
I still don't. I did my physical not long ago, and they read my number. I'm like, okay.
What does it mean?
What does that mean? What is
Exactly.
80, 128 over 80. What does that mean?
That's where the secret sauce comes in. That's where when you take your blood pressure, it automatically uploads to that app, and that's going to give you instant coaching, and it helps you understand. You're going to have a spectrum of, you see there. Are you in a good range, mild, medium, or high, or and it's going to show you that. It's going to tell you what systolic means and diastolic, and those things. It's going to go into that for you, and in simple terms that
we can understand.
That easier to understand.
Right. And I think when you consider, like, even taking a step back, 1 in 2 U.S. adults has high blood pressure, whether you know it or you don't know it. So there's definitely a need for
1 in 2 adults.
Yes.
And that's defined by what, 25 and older?
18
and older.
18 and older.
Right. So it's so prevalent, and that's, I think, what led us to create this solution, because there is a problem. People don't know that they have high blood pressure a lot of times, and they're not doing anything about it. And so I think our program really makes it so simple and easy for our users to not only take their reading just like 30 seconds a day, but then give them a visual cue of what those numbers mean, where you fall on a scale, right? So it's green, and then it's yellow, and then it's orange, and then it's dark orange, and then it's red. So you can see, well, 140 over 80 doesn't really mean anything to me, but I'm closer more to the red than I am the green. So it gives you that visual cueing of, okay, this is probably where I need to start to make changes.
So 18 and above, I mean, that's everybody.
It's
so
astounding.
A guy in his 50s, my age, it's got to be
higher.
80. What? I mean,
it's higher.
Right. So when you look at companies or labor groups, especially where it's a lot of men and, lifestyle choices may be different from retail younger crowds, it's more prevalent and the cost is higher. So we're seeing an incredible spend in those companies, and really, how can we help you drive down those costs and help your members, our users be healthier overall?
This it's not a phenomenon. It's a medical issue, right? But this high blood pressure thing, I talked to my doctor, and I've had it for years. And, I'm overweight. I have a nice shape. It's round. That is a shape.
You're in shape.
It is a shape.
You're round.
So I just recently hired a personal trainer, and I figured if I pay them, I will actually go to them, and it's worked so far. So, but anyway, I don't mind saying this, but my measurements from like here to here to here were all the same. By the way, that's not a good thing. Okay.
Correct.
So anyway, all of that, if you don't think you have it, just because you're in great shape, but Rutgeek takes care of himself, doesn't mean you don't have high blood pressure. Talk to my doctor. I'm like, well, if I lose 20 pounds, can I come off medication? He said, no. Your family has a history. You're high strung.
Yeah.
You're type A. That phone wears you out. I'm sitting in the doctor's office looking at it, and he said, you're probably never going to come off, just to be honest with you. You can do everything right, and you may just be that guy. And that's why I think that's one reason why the numbers are one. And now it's not even 120 over 80, is it? Isn't it? Did they move that number?
120 over 80 is now the pre-hypertension area.
It's like 110 over 70 now is normal, is what they say, I think. Or
I think that for blood pressure, the standard is 120 over 80
Still,
or less. Yeah, but the number for stage 1 is 130 over 80. So having moved down a little bit or kind of opening up so people are able to catch it a little bit earlier and maybe make those changes that they wouldn't have until they were at 140 over 80 or 140 over 90, which is 140 over 90 is stage 2. So really,
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you don't value your health, I mean, like value not getting your chest cut open or whatever, most people value your eyesight.
Yeah.
If you think about the one thing that, I mean, we don't want to have anything, but if I could not lose one thing, I don't want to lose my ability to see. And blood pressure can do that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Uncontrolled blood
Absolutely.
pressure will lead to blindness.
And that the reason they call high blood pressure the silent killer is because you could walk around with the blood pressure of 140 over 90 and not know it and not feel it, or it won't be any different if you had 120 over 80. You feel exactly the same. That's why you're like, I don't feel it. Whereas if you throw your shoulder out and you go to PT, you feel it and you work to get it better.
You work out with a trainer
and then you know then you know that it's better. Whereas with blood pressure, unless you're monitoring it and you're taking your medication, and even people who are taking their medication, like for me example, I was taking my medication and my blood pressure was still high, and I couldn't figure out, but I had to work with that's when I could work with my provider. I was sending him through their app. I sent him my results and said, look, my blood pressure is still high even though I'm taking my medication.
So when you have the stats, the data, so to speak, to examine where you are, what does that mean to the fund as a whole, like the insurance funds and the things that business managers worry about? What are the costs?
Well, a pill's a lot cheaper than a heart surgery.
Well, I think, right, that's true. And usually high blood pressure medications are kind of cheaper than some of the newer, like diabetes medications, for example, or statins. But when you look at the cost of managing someone with high blood pressure, what we typically see in our book of business is $8,000 to $12,000 per year. So if you imagine, maybe in a labor group, it might be closer to $12,000 to manage annually, but the cost of a stent is
$30,000 for the cost of a stent.
So if you're not managing it well and you're going to the ER often, those costs are going to be a little bit higher than if you have it a little bit more under control and seeing your primary care doctor quite regularly. And I'm a registered nurse, so I've worked in the ER. I've worked in inpatient case management. I can tell you, to Patrick's point about not knowing, I've seen people in both spectrums. In a clinic setting where we're just having a conversation, their blood pressure is 200, but I've also seen at 200 systolic someone having a stroke, right?
Wow.
So you could very well go either way, and you just might not know that you have it. So it can be costly, especially because you could be walking around for a long time and not know that you have it.
Yeah, so in our book, what we say is the average cost for a person with hypertension, medical cost all in, is about $10,000 per person per year.
Yeah. So I have a personal story, and I shared it with Patrick. So my father-in-law has one of these. He had some in the booth, and I got one, gave it to him, and he's got the app, and all that. Checking it looks high. He had high blood pressure, but it looked higher. Goes to the doctor. For a normal checkup, he waited. Might not have been the smartest thing, but he waited. He's 76, right? And the nurse takes his blood pressure. It's good. It's fine. Now, mine usually goes up. It's called white coat pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Right, white coat.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
What is white? Wait. What is white coat?
When you
pressure?
see a white coat, a doctor, your blood pressure goes up because you're
Okay.
worried about what they're going to tell you.
Yeah.
So your blood pressure goes up.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, my father-in-law had the phone, right? He didn't say nothing to the nurse. It looked good. So she leaves, and I don't know if it was probably wasn't RN. It was probably whatever. I don't know. There's different practitioner,
yeah.
right? So anyway, the doctor comes in. They're talking, and he's like, I've got this thing at home, and I checked my blood pressure, and it's been high, but the nurse said it's good. Yada yada yada. Like, and he's running like 170 over whatever, right? Pretty high. And so he's like, well, let me check it. The doctor checks it. It's 170 over 110. The nurse missed it. So, now her number was a slightly high, but it wasn't, it wasn't 120 over 80, but it wasn't, right? So just that one thing, right? If he wouldn't have had the app and wouldn't have said, well, just take a look at this,
Exactly.
he would have never checked it again. Now, who knows what that would have resulted in, right? We don't know. We can't see the future. But what an added value, when I take it to my doctor, and I say, well, yada, yada, yada. But I just want to, give you that testimony that it was good.
So you have the app and it tells you what's going on with you. But is there anything you can do other than medication?
Oh, yeah,
the
losing
members
weight.
are-
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a
What are
number
the things that you can do as if the members are listening? What are things? I'm clearly losing weight would be one. Yeah. What
Exercise.
Exercise.
Physical activity is huge to help lowering your blood pressure and your cholesterol, right? So it can increase your good cholesterols, but also help lower blood pressure. So physical activity is incredible. Even just walking 5 minutes a day, we've seen huge drops in numbers or drops in lowering blood pressure. So physical activity, not smoking or decreasing smoking. Believe it or not, alcohol. If you're drinking alcohol regularly, maybe more than 3 drinks a day, that can also, if you kind of cut that back, will impact your blood pressure as well. getting better quality sleep. There's so many things. So I think really for listeners, it's finding something that you want to start with and then just committing to that. And slowly, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to quit smoking cold turkey. Maybe it's just, I'm only going to smoke so many of these a day. And then over time, you're able to decrease and maybe add physical activity. Or maybe you want to start with physical activity. Maybe it's just walking 5 minutes. So I think there's a number of things that can be done to help lower.
And I would say the disclaimer on that would be, if you're regularly checking your blood pressure and it's high, don't self-diagnose and don't just think, I can lose weight and get there.
Point.
Go to the doctor. Go ahead and get on some meds. Because if you're like most of us, we have a New Year's resolution. We never stick to it. But would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so then work your way to get off the medication.
How much does it fluctuate on a daily basis? If you have high blood pressure and your numbers, what did you say was high? 138 over
130 over 80 is stage 1 hypertension or stage 1 high blood pressure. And it can fluctuate throughout the day. If you've had caffeine, if you're stressed, if you've been walking.
How much pressure are you under? Whatever.
Right, exactly. So all of those things can raise it. So what we say is, and maybe the first step is just to get to know your numbers. You don't know you need gas until you see that you're going. So I think it's so important just to take your blood pressure regularly. Maybe it's just starting at the same time every day, or maybe when you go pick up your groceries, if you're at one of those retail chains, you can check it while you're there.
Every day.
Not every day, but getting to check it often, I think, is the first start. If you don't have a monitor, you don't have access to Hello Heart, I think just knowing your numbers is a great way to start. So to your point, maybe you don't know you have high blood pressure. And that's, I think, where a lot of the population is.
I can tell you, and I'm probably not terribly different than a lot of our members. I get my blood pressure taken when I go to the doctor.
And that's it.
That's
right.
it.
Yeah, and I'll say this, that probably in the morning's the best time to take it to get a very good, you just got up, right? You haven't really stressed yourself out.
You haven't had coffee yet.
You haven't had coffee yet.
Yeah.
That's the greatest time to take it. And then the other thing that members ought to know, or people who may watch this, is you can always stop by your local fire station. They will check it. It's not near as good as Hello Heart because it's at your home and it's your table. But until you get access to this, fire station will always take it. Yeah. And that's a great way to get hopefully a real accurate reading. The machines are good. I think sometimes they fluctuate, right? I think that technology has come a long way, right? But I think stopping at those places is so important, and knowing what your number is before you go talk to your doctor is important.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. You can take your readings and email them directly to your provider right from the app. So you don't have to transcribe. You don't have to do anything. Say, hey, doc, here's my last month's readings. Or you take them in when you go in and just show them. Say, look, here's what I've done. Because first thing a doctor does when you go into his office is he takes your blood pressure. Well, that's your blood pressure at that point in time. And again, because the white lab syndrome that we talked about earlier can have an impact. But you can go back and say, hey, look, here's what I've done for the last month. And so then he can look at it and get a reading of, okay, you've been fluctuating or you've been flat, whatever, and then make some diagnosis or, a plan based on a bigger picture than just walking in.
So how do you get people to actually use this program and stay engaged with it?
Actually, what we do is we send something out. It will be our best practice is we send out postcards in an envelope,
so to the membership as
a home, yeah.
Well, the first step would be to have the trustees of the Health Fund buy into the program because there is a usage fee, and then they would do the cards out.
Correct.
And then yada yada yada. But the number one step is to get labor management to understand there's a cost savings. By the way, they all have to be fiduciaries. We talked about that in the last segment with the money managers, and they need to see that there's a cost savings. And when you see that, then they have a due diligence, in my opinion, to just do it because it's the right thing to do. You can't make the member do it, but you can offer it to the member.
Correct.
So how difficult is it for a fund to implement Hello Heart?
Implementing is very simple. We take 69 days. The biggest piece of the implementation is the eligibility file because that's essentially what we need really to get started is an eligibility file. That's to take the most time. And then the fund manager, administrator, all they're doing then is we're working on the communication pieces that need to go out. We take on all the responsibility, the heavy lift of that.
What do you mean by eligibility, Phil?
Well, who's eligible for
Yeah.
insurance and who isn't?
Okay.
Right. So it's not, if you're not eligible for insurance, you wouldn't get opportunity.
Right.
Tell
Okay,
us about the cost, because it's
Yeah, the cost is based on the size of the fund. So I'm going to use simple numbers. So most funds in this area are less than 10,000 covered adults. And so spouses are eligible. So if you have 100 members in a fund, and we know that at least 40% of them, I'm going to use easy numbers, 40% of them are going to have hypertension, right? And so we know first year we usually get about 20% engagement of that 40%. So 20% of 40 is 8. So 8 people enrolled over that first year, the cost would be $588 times 8. So it's a subscription fee you pay yearly. So you're only paying for those that enroll in the program. It's an opt-in program. And so if only 8 people enroll, you only pay for 8 people. And that's it. So it's not, other disease management programs that you would pay on a PMPM fee, regardless if somebody had it or not. No, this is just a subscription fee. You pay annually, $588 for those 8 people.
Well, I'm glad we have an expert in the room, the RN, right? Because
Well, that's why I brought Steph.
very good, right?
I need an expert.
So it's something that's fun to do if you have access to one of these machines. Is it's good to check it in the morning because you're calm, cool, collective, right? But if you get really cranked up, and I know none of us do, but when you get to that point, go check it. You'll realize what stress is doing to your body.
Mm-hmm.
When you check it, when you're at you're about to snap. If you can just think to go check it, you'll learn to calm yourself down a little bit because your blood pressure is through the roof. Would you agree? I mean,
100%.
I know y'all see that.
100%.
I mean, it's amazing what you're doing to your body when you're jacked up. And most of the time we're jacked up over nothing, but it's something, right? But it's interesting to do that because when we're at those high stress moments, I'm glad sometimes it's not around because I might get scared, but I have done that and just holy cow, I'm about to kill myself, and it's involuntarily, I need to calm down.
Right. That's one of the other things that we focus on. So, we're talking about how can you make change, but that's one of the things that we, in our recommendations and insights that are personalized to the user. So you mentioned how do we keep people engaged, but that's it, right? It's this level of personalization that we do within our app. So as our application gets to know you and your readings, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your weight, your physical activity, it's going to start to make recommendations. And some of those are based on how to manage stress, right? So you have the ability to even make our app smarter and get to know you better by liking, thumbs upping, or thumbs downing some of those recommendations.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to bring that up is important to know that it's not just us that are overweight. Everybody thinks, oh, well, you're obese or whatever, and you got high blood pressure. I know some people that are really big that don't have high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. Their BMI must be 50 or whatever, and they don't have it. I'm amazed by that. It's really so individualized.
Is there any genetic predisposition to it?
There is.
Yeah, and I think there are some ethnicities like African Americans, Asian, Hispanic, more likely to have uncontrolled high blood pressure. So definitely some populations are more at risk, I would say, and so it's important again to have the conversations with your physician or caregiver and know those numbers. But absolutely,
are there? I think about the Mediterranean diet. A lot of people talk about that. I wonder if blood pressure there is more under control than it is here. I mean, I would say it is, but I don't know. But
that's interesting. I haven't looked, but I think that's probably your hypothesis. Probably is
the way they eat.
Spot on,
it
yeah.
affects.
But suffice to
they're
say,
physically active.
And
I
they're
think
physically active.
Right, they're
100%.
walking. We're a lot of America has desk jobs. We sit. Not the labor industry. Luckily, you guys are getting more physical activity depending on what industry or what they're doing. But yeah,
that's
sure.
Interesting. We're looking for ways to find electric bikes. We might ought to pedal a little bit, right? But
Yes.
Yeah. What else? Let me just ask you this. So I said eyes. It affects your eyes.
Yes.
What other internal organs does it affect that we don't often talk about? We know the heart. So
I'm glad you asked that question. I think it's important to talk about because we don't often talk about the effects, but eyes, kidneys, your believe it or not, sexual dysfunction comes with uncontrolled high blood pressure. There's a lot of things that can happen if you don't take care of it. And those are just to name a few: peripheral vascular disease, the list goes on and on.
So
and it really,
systolic and diastolic, I think is that, did I say it right?
yes, you did.
Wow.
Which
A
is the
plus.
higher.
So
what's
so
the
so one of them. Go ahead.
Systolic is the top number. That's
Okay.
what your heart's doing when it's beating, the force that it has to push out against the vessels.
That's what I wanted to get to. One of them is coming in and one's going out. Is that right? Or no? One's going out for sure.
They're both going out. Well,
Okay.
one's the systolic's when your heart is beating and the pressure it's pushing against those vessels, and
Okay.
then diastolic is at rest. What your blood has to go through a vessel. So they both are important, but we put a lot of emphasis on systolic because you think that's when your heart's pumping and there's more pressure there, obviously.
It's if it has to work harder, it's just like an engine in a car, right? If you
Right.
stomp it, the RPMs go up, right? I mean
Right.
it all kind of makes sense if you put in that terminology.
I know we're coming to the end of this thing, but I wanted to ask you, how much does inflammation play in that? I mean, I read a lot about. I keep in pretty good shape, and I read a lot about inflammation because that to me is like what causes pretty much everything else. Am I off in that assessment?
No, I wouldn't say you're off. I think that that does play into it for sure. I haven't looked at the research on inflammation in relation to blood pressure, but I mean, are you saying like heart inflammation
Just the
or
fact that we eat a lot of things that are genetically modified. We eat a lot of things that are, that have gluten in them and things that cause inflammation in your body, which affects your joints and it affects your, I would think that it would affect your blood pressure.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that actually. No one's asked me that question, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. So I love that question. I would have to do some research if I wanted to give a
I will get
thoughtful
you.
answer.
My son is has his PhD, his doctorate in biostats. He's a biostatistician. I'll ask him that question. I'm sure he'll find some research behind that. So
sure.
I'll get an answer for that. But it's something that we sweep under the rug as construction workers. By the way, we're the biggest, baddest, toughest, right? Whether you're male or female,
for sure.
nothing hurts us. We don't have mental health problems. We don't have any physical problems.
Yeah.
That's who we are. And that's so far from the truth. And so, bringing awareness, bringing this, I'd say to the business managers, bringing this to your trustees, if only one user uses it and it saves their life, is it worth the money, right? We know more will do it. But to me, that's what it's about,
Right. I did want to add just to that point, if I can. We've talked a lot about it as a blood pressure solution, but we really are looking at reducing cardiac risk, and we do that in a number of ways. So we added cholesterol back in September of last year, but we're able to, through the monitor, help alert users if they have an irregular heartbeat. Also, inform them if they're having a critically elevated reading and kind of guide them or help them understand what the best next steps in care are. So really, I think when you talk about the ability to greatly reduce catastrophic events using our program, just because it can do a number of things to help lower that cardiac risk, is so important.
I didn't realize that. I mean, I go get my EKG and my doctor reads it, and I always like to look at that stuff because, I want to see what they're seeing, and it goes up and it goes down, right? I'm like, does it look like last year? And that's what they're doing. They're comparing. Mm-hmm. It's good to know that the app is doing that in whatever way it's doing it and will alert you because, that's not always a tattletale, but it can help.
Right. Well, we heard a story not too long ago about one of our users who was taking her blood pressure and she had felt short of breath. And so she just thought it was part of, maybe high blood pressure. She didn't know. And she took her reading and found that she had an irregular heartbeat, went to her doctor. He did an EKG and then I think sent her home with a device to watch her heart rate over the next few days and caught a really devastating arrhythmia. Had she not caught it then, it could have killed her. So
Yeah.
I think there's so much that we can do, or our application and program is doing, to help people identify where their risk is and helping them have those conversations with their providers.
So how do you work with a local union? Like what's that process look like for a business manager or for the fund manager?
We would get the approval, like Randy said, from the trustees, and then we'd work with the administrator on getting, like I say, the mailings. We would attend health fairs.
It's an opt-in program. I would get a mailer as a member
Right.
saying this is available to you if you want it. If I checked yes, you're going to send me the unit The fund's now being charged,
Yep.
not me.
Correct.
And I get to use it and get all the benefits and results from the health perspective.
Is that done from any particular time of year, like during open enrollment, or like what does that look like?
We get best result. I mean, we can certainly do it. Most funds are like maybe a January 1 effective date. We get better results. We do it off cycle. We do a lot of mailings, a lot of communications around, like February was Heart Month, so we did a lot around Heart Month. May is Cholesterol Month, I believe, and I think there's 4 or 5 different, heart.
But you can do a
months,
mail
so we
out
can
as
do it.
often as the trustees want.
We usually
Right?
do quarterly.
Right.
Yes, we usually do
Co-branded.
quarterly.
Co-branded, so it doesn't look like it's just coming from Hello Heart, but also from the organization that it's coming from, so it's more impactful. I think that way too.
I want to make sure I say it again. If you go and stop at a fire station or do whatever, don't self-diagnose. Don't. And Rutt's a very healthy guy, and I always look up to his. He's fast and he does all this. He's awesome. You can go 40 hours without eating. I can't go. 5 minutes.
Look, I'm also 55 years old.
Yeah.
I can't play around anymore.
Don't
I
look
got
a day
kids.
under 62.
I hope to have grandkids at some point in my life. I can't be fooling around with it.
You heard what I said, right?
What'd you say?
Don't look a day under 62.
Yeah.
But in reality, don't think that may just go ahead and go see a doctor, get prescribed, and then work on the health aspects.
Thank you, Randy. Yeah,
I think that's important to make sure we, until the trustees engage this, right? Make sure you do the right thing.
Yeah.
So how do interested parties get in touch with you? You've got HelloHeart.com.
You got HelloHeart.com. You can. Randy has my contact information. My phone number is 513-484-1421.
I'll put that in the notes too.
Yeah,
Anybody
please.
wants
And
to
or contact Randy. Randy will get a hold of me. He knows. He knows
Don't
where I
put
live.
that on any bathroom stalls. But
I was going to, so
we'll put you on our website as well.
Yeah.
And everybody knows Patrick's been around. He's only 32 years old, and
wish.
30 of those have been in labor movement. But
That's right.
we've always appreciate your partnership, and thank you for bringing Stephanie today. And it's good to have an expert in the room to tell us. So we should be really watching what we're doing. But I think this is needed. I think we should do this again and expound a little further, to be honest with you.
I'd love to be able to do it and show what the app looks like.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
You know what? We need to bring a unit in
We can do
and do a little test. I think that would be really good.
We do demos all the time
Yeah.
for funds and
That-
trustees. Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would really be cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Will you go to a union meeting
Absolutely.
and have a few where members could check their, I mean, I know you'll give some away. I get that, but that's not what I'm getting at. I'm really getting at, let them see how easy it is to use. I mean, because it's really easy. Well, you'll do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Some locals have health fairs and stuff too, I mean,
They do.
Yeah. No, we go to those health fairs all the time.
Perfect.
All the time.
Patrick, Stephanie, HelloHeart.com. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks for
for
coming
having
to
us.
Talkin Trades.
Thanks.
And we're out.